Not every children's television show needs to have the most layered characters, but the show does actually do, I think, a pretty good job of developing them and making them more than just Hot Pop, who's like, the elder who just thinks the old ways were better. Sprig, who was like, I'm the young plucky kid who is here to show Anne the way. And then you've got Polly, who's like, violence child. So you have those archetypes right there, and you have things with like Hot Pop where you get a lot of his regrets and things that he wished he had done in life. All these characters have layered elements to them that I think they make the four main primary cast just really entertaining to watch.
And sort of different from other main girl characters like Mabel from Gravity Falls or Luz from the Owl House, where they're a bit over energetic. With Anne, she's more laid back, so she kind of just goes with the flow.
Anna's a much more passive character, which is why she is more
easily
susceptible to easily manipulated.
Yep. Of the trio, she's kind of like the third wheel. Sasha's kind of like the leader. Marcy's kind of the smart one, and Anne's kind of just like there.
But also, Marcy's kind of the third wheel too, and that's a big part of her character. Sasha and Anne really understand each other, and Marcy's kind of this odd girl out in that dynamic.
Sasha, her defining character trait is she's a leader. Marcy's trait is she's smart, and doesn't really have the defining character trait. But over her time in Amphibia, she starts to sort of get that.
Yeah, she's trying to find herself. One of the main themes of the show is friendship. She has this perception of it at the start where she basically was pressured into getting the music box by her best friends. Her whole journey in Amphibia, it kind of changes her perception, like with Toad Tax. Initially, she was totally manipulated into being an officer. She is kind of able to break away from that manipulation. That's kind of her story, is to redefine what friendship means to her.
The defining episodes of season 1 are definitely Toad Tax and Reunion.
Also Prison Break. Sasha is quite interesting, where you have the archetypical bully character, but she is so in a way that's not immediately obvious when she's introduced. She's in the prison cell giving a lot of positive affirmations to the toads that visit her cell, so they're all like very friendly to her, but she's not doing it out of any kind of genuine feeling. At least at the start. She kind of perceives Amphibia as kind of like a game, or like as a fantasy. This stuff isn't really real. She literally calls Sprig a squeaky toy, and is confused as to why Anne would care for these frogs. She just can't conceive of it.
That is textbook dehumanization.
Defroganization?
Defroganization.
Yes.
Defroganization. It's not treating them as human because to her, they aren't human, and therefore they are not worthy of anything, I
or
guess.
less significant, you know?
Less significant, yeah.
There's one moment in particular with Sasha that I just think really hits hard, where Sasha is holding on to Anne, and all the planters are backing her up. Sasha looks at the planters doing that, and I think in that moment, she just thinks, I don't have anyone that could do that for me. At least selflessly. She just says, maybe you're better off without me, and let's go. And it's sort of both a moment of self-reflection and of destruction. Grime does catch her, but I don't think she thought that. Grime only did so because he could use her as his, like, lieutenant.
It's all about that emotional tension. From Anne's perspective, that here's the first familiar person that she knows, but she doesn't really know her because she's never seen her in her quote-unquote real light.
Anne was about to give in, but it's only because Sprig really hammered in that a real friend wouldn't do that. The ends do not justify the means. In the first season, the scope was limited to the valley for the in-universe reason that it was surrounded by mountains. In the start of season 2, the snow has melted, the pass is now open, so they can finally travel to Newtopia. I really like the fact that they opened up the world, they expanded it. Now that we're familiar with the characters, we can finally put them in new settings.
It would seem like the show transitions from being this fairly episodic, slice-of-life sort of thing into, oh, they're on a journey now, they're going to Newtopia. But the reality is, it doesn't really transition. It's still episodic, it's just they also happen to be moving.
The first quarter of the season, there's not, like, much.
There is the Gravity Falls cameo
There is the Gravity Falls thing, and it does have the best character in the whole show, which is, of course, Frog Soos.
Yep.
Frog Soos.
I
Yeah.
think the best character in any show.
I really admire the complete lack of effort put into that name. I love it.
There's Toecatcher, Sasha's solo episode, which I feel like is a pretty good episode because it introduces Yunan. It allows you to see the effects of reunion on both Sasha and Grime.
Grime was kind of manipulated by Sasha into giving the Toads more positive feedback. It stops being just a ploy to manipulate people, and he becomes slightly more genuine, especially to his relationship with Sasha.
All of the stuff with Sasha trying to re-ingratiate herself with her friends is, I think, the best stuff. The talent show, especially, is probably my favorite episode of the show.
I would say it's no big deal.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it's so good. Yeah.
That song made me cry.
Yeah, it's so good.
It started off where Hop Hop was kind of guilty about burying the chest and basically lying to Anne.
The end impact of it, I feel like, works, but the way they kind of got there didn't work for me because it kind of felt like they'd resolved it been after the rain, but then it's like, oh, surprise, it's still there, which you wrapped it up way too quickly. But the way in which they did it was good.
In a similar way, the Frobo buildup, where it's like, okay, you've got this ominous robot in the background slowly advancing towards the heroes, and what will that do? What will that bring? And then it comes, and then it's like, oh, it's Polly finds its robot friend. Like,
Yep.
that build-up doesn't really pay off. It doesn't help that it's following them to Newtopia, and then they go from Newtopia back to Wartwood, and it's not until they get back to Wartwood that it's, like, chasing after them, and then, like, turns around and goes back the other way.
It feels a bit strange.
But I do like what that episode does for Polly, because Polly is, again, Violence Child. It just adds this level of, like, maybe she's into engineering and things like that was expanded on in season 3.
Hopping Mole. The one where and she's trying to get a gift for her mom, and she ends up getting the butterfly, and then her and Sprig have that talk on the balcony. You find out it's like, oh, Sprig didn't really get to know his parents. Even just watching that scene out of context, it always just manages to hit me in the feels. It's a very well done scene.
I think it is incredibly funny that the entire season, General Yunan is built up as this is the top soldier in the Newtopian army. And then the moment that Andrias turns out to be evil, she's with our heroes.
I think they really do a great job with all of the season finales of really having these heavy-hitting moments. With Marcy, she, like Sasha, perceives Amphibia much more like a game. The difference is that she, being more of a nerd, is much more invested in what goes on. It's a heart-wrenching moment. A lot of complicated emotions going, where she would move away from the only friends that she really had. So she doesn't want to let that go.
Everyone talks about, obviously, with True Colors, there is the moment, there is the scene. The moment, though, that really got me with True Colors is when Sprig gets thrown out the window.
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
God, yeah.
Because at that moment, we have not seen Super Saiyan Anne. So at that moment, there is no clear way that Sprig is not going to fall to his death.
I don't know who it was. It was a storyboard artist or one of the directors. They basically said in that fight between Anne and Sasha, Anne was literally going for the kill because she felt so betrayed by Sasha. She was just so mad at her that she basically almost wanted to kill her, which is kind of scary.
Because of these more serialized episodes, the tone of the show can kind of be perceived as much more serious.
Mhm.
But really, a lot of the show is much more lighthearted
Mhm.
and comedy focused. When they do go back to Earth, they really kind of go back to a similar tone as they had with season 1. It's Anne, the planters, but the roles are reversed. They're the frog out of water.
Yep.
It does expand a little bit on season 2, following up on Hot Pop's acting thing and Polly's mechanical knowledge. I don't know if I dislike it necessarily, but it introduces a lot of characters.
It does.
Some of them, they only appear like twice.
I don't remember a single name of the human characters from season
No.
3.
No.
I remember what they're like. No idea of their names.
There's a couple of Amphibia episodes in the first half of season 3. Those are really well done, like Turning Point. That is literally the turning point of Sasha's character.
She finally ends up redeeming herself by protecting Wartwood. these frogs, they matter at last. Of course, the reason that they need protecting is because of the change that has occurred in Amphibia.
Mhm.
The latter half of season 3 is much more like a kind of post-apocalypse.
I liked the episode where Anne solves racism in a single episode.
Wait, what?
3 armies.
When the frogs are like, newts and toads, they're bad. And the toads are like, frogs and newts, they're bad. And the newts are like, frogs and toads, they're bad. And Anne's like, everyone work together. And then they don't. And then she's like, I am God. And they're like, okay, I guess God tells us not to do the racism anymore.
Yes, yeah.
I never really thought of it like that. I'm just like, you got it right.
That sort of tension is there from the first season. Having it fully resolved at that point kind of feels a little bit disingenuous. It would have been nice to have like a little bit of, even though they're fighting on the same side, they're still uneasy with each other and all that, and show how over time that can change.
King Andrias was friends with a toad and a frog. It seems like the implication of their separation is much more to do with that separation in the backstory. There is kind of this hierarchy going. The newts are on top, then there's the toads, then the frogs. And I think that only really occurred after the split in King Andrias' backstory.
That episode feels incredibly rushed. In 11 minutes, we are introduced to the fact that this friendship existed, introduced to these characters, and then we see it all fall apart, and it just happens so incredibly quickly. Leaf's relationship with Andrias is vital to the finale. That is what beats Andrias. On top of that, that's the episode that introduces Andrias' relationship with his father, which is also vitally important to the finale. I feel like if those ideas had a little bit more time to breathe, then I feel like it would be more effective.
The fact that it's just like, it's 1,000 years and it's the same guy, I always felt kind of like...
1,000 years is a long time. I think 100 would have worked.
Not 100. 100 would have seemed too quick. I don't know. Would it have had the same impact if it was like some descendant of Andrias who was just doing what he had always been told to do?
Yeah, I feel like that could have worked.
I feel like he could have had similar sorts of beats. What really isn't covered is the fact that Andrias is a 1,000 plus year old mind, and what that does to a mind. There's no way you stay sane at a certain point.
He has this mission, and he needs to carry it out at all costs. Like, no cost too great for King Andrias.
You know what really would have sold me on the 1,000 years thing? Is if it was a full half-hour episode, just a short montage of showing those 1,000 years of King Andrias, him cybernetically enhancing himself and everything he has to do to get to that point to show his dedication.
There's really 2 episodes that comprise the finale, one in the human world, and then the next in Amphibia.
I would say it's really 2.5, because like
Yeah.
the beginning of the end is the start of it. All in is the middle, and then the hardest thing is wrapping everything up.
The herons that ate Sprig and Polly's parents come back, and so like there's this closure to that arc.
From a story running standpoint, it makes sense to close that arc, but like clearly the frogs are traumatized by this heron, and then they just sort of overcome that trauma within the span of a minute or two.
They use that dance, right? Like, it kind of is comical in a way, how they actually resolve that trauma.
And then they're like, and the birds are our friends now, and like that's cool, but that's not how trauma works.
The whole planner dance or whatever it's called, that was a nice callback to that one episode from season 2, and then also the Andrias flashback episode to show the connection between the planners and Leaf and how she's an ancestor of them before it's fully revealed. But yeah, it does kind of feel a bit weird.
That is the one aspect of the first half of that finale that I have any qualms with. I mean, honestly, everything, the action, the way it's happening, Anne's fight against Andrias is just great. Anne has god powers, but when those start to fade, it starts to become this question of like, oh, what's gonna save her? And then the answer, of course, is K-pop.
Yes.
The answer all
As it
along.
saves everyone.
I'm a sucker for big robot fights. What
I
can
really
say?
like that big robot fight.
Andrias in his giant mech form, he got big hands. I'm a big fan of big hands.
I do really like that mech suit. And that fight is so good.
The way it also handles the license song it has, the Blackpink song, it handles it better than I feel Reunion did. Reunion with Lead On Me, it kind of felt like it was thrown in there. With All In, it felt like it had more of an impact on the episode.
There's also the fight between Sasha and Darcy. With King Andrias and Anne's fight, there was quite a bit of action and it was getting tense while her powers were running out, but it was much more something that could be resolved by reasoning. With Darcy, it's like fighting a machine. I felt like just purely the action and the intensity of that fight was excellently pulled off.
This really feels like the finale. How do you have a finale on top of the finale?
I watched the end, I'm like, the Heart Singer just could be like a nice little wrap-up episode. And then the moon came, I'm like, oh, I forgot about the moon. Oh yeah, that's a thing. Oh dear.
The first shot in the first episode is this, the red moon. And it's like, in all the promotional material, you see the moon. So it doesn't come out of completely nowhere. That's how it kind of feels, is that, okay, well, there's still one big obstacle.
Every single moment in that finale is just great. The anime fight, it's just genuinely epic.
I did see a little animatic from like the storyboarding phase where like that whole fight scene was set to the Gurren Lagann opening.
Oh wow.
Felt good because during that scene I was like, this is very Gurren Lagann.
Marcy's line is like, this is the most anime fight ever, or something like that. I'm just
yeah.
Yep, that's Marcy to a T. The references in both the character designs and the weapons they use, I kind of like that because they had the racket and the cats. Sasha had the herons and the pom-poms, and then Marcy has the big old D&D dice.
Yes.
Yeah, 20, baby. It felt like the show going out almost with one last big hurrah.
And is essentially told that there is this option to basically sacrifice yourself to save everyone. Even though you're anticipating it, when it actually happens, it had me bawling.
Yep.
It was just a very hard-hitting, emotional death of the character. Even though she is kind of revived, it's technically another Anne, and that is actually something that Matt wanted to have. It's like a philosophical quandary, like the ship of Theseus, basically. There is this new Anne, but you're still giving the send-off to the old Anne. Like, her coming back doesn't lessen the impact of her sacrifice. I just find that a really great way of keeping that so it doesn't cheapen anything.
With this new body, it's like kind of symbolic of how Anne's a completely different person from when she came into Amphibia and when she finally left.
One of the big themes of the show is that it's about change and becoming your best self, as Matt Brawley stated in the Kermit the Frog consultant video when the show was released. It's ultimately about change, and that comes in both mental and physical.
People change, people move, people don't always stick together forever. You can have incredible friendships that, unfortunately, due to circumstances outside of anyone's control, just don't last. With Anne and Sprig, it's like, that's it. There are those moments where they both know that. And that's, I think, really what makes it so emotional, is that it's very definitive. You might think that, like, once these three girls have left Amphibia, they'll stick around forever, but they don't. They drift apart, which I think is a very realistic thing. Your childhood friendships don't always last into adulthood.
It's a bittersweet ending. It sucks that that's how the show has to end, but with, like, the themes of the show, it makes the most sense that that's how, like, things are gonna end.
The flash forward of the frog characters, everyone in Amphibia, there's like a new continent to explore. That's just there to give this feeling that just because the story is over, it doesn't mean the characters aren't going to have more adventures.
I have to mention the bird snail.
Oh, that was
the snurd.
It's
the
cute,
snurd, yes.
Weird and disturbing all at the same time. Like,
I don't want to think about it, but I cannot.
Yeah, it's like
I had blocked it out of my mind.
To go and sort of a more nicer note, I think the things I like, just like the references that the characters held on to, like Andrias, he had the leaf for leaf. He was using Barrel's Warhammer as a cane. He had Marcy's little robot brooch thing on his uniform. It's like nice to see how he's remembering those people.
Amphibia is a show that, from the outset, I really could not see the direction where it was going to really hit these high emotional points. I thought it was just going to be more comedy-centric. I think it's really stacked up to be a show that will be remembered for a long time. much like in the way of Gravity Falls. Like, it has a definitive conclusion and told a great story.
They should never make any more of this show.
No.
Change is scary, but it's inevitable. You can't just stay in the same place in life forever. You kind of have to move on at some point.
The show serves as a great reminder that it might seem people in your life are static, but they can change. Maybe it takes time, maybe it takes other things happening, but change happens.
It's change, but like also becoming your best self. So it's like a
Yes.
positive change, hopefully.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate message that Matt Brawley and, of course,
Kermit the Frog.
yeah, of course, Kermit the Frog, you know, obviously,
Special
like,
consultant,
he
Kermit
really
the
wanted
Frog.
those themes.
Speaking of that special consultant, he's here now.
What?
He's here with me. Hold on.
What?
Oh, wow.
Kermit, where'd you come from?
Oh, well, I just popped in for a really quick second to talk about Amphibia, and you should go watch it on Disney Plus. Go subscribe to Disney Plus right now, or pirate it. Frankly, I recommend pirating it. Disney already has far
No,
too
stop!
much.
There's snipers outside my house! Kermit!
Kermit, no,
Please!
Cal, I'm sorry. I have to take the shot.